All right. Thanks everybody for coming along this morning. I just want to start off by acknowledging the Wurundjeri peoples as the traditional owners of this land where we are here today, and to acknowledge them and pay my respects to their elders both past and present. My name is Rueben Berg. I'm one of the co-chairs of the First People's Assembly of Victoria. And Negara Murray, my fellow co-chair, is unable to be here today, but I've got Aunty Esme, one of our members of council, and the co-chair of the Elders' Voice alongside me here today. Aunty Esme is just going to read out a statement that we've put on our website to share with community and then say a few words. I'll say a few words and then we'll take some questions. Aunty Esme.
Thank you, Rueben. And I too want to acknowledge country, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and thank them, elders past and present, for allowing us to be on country. This is a statement that we have sent to our people. There's no beating around the bush. The referendum result hurts, and it really does. And we know today that a lot of them are mourning as a result. Our number one priority must be to look after each other. Let's be gentle on ourselves and others. We know the referendum has been hard going for the community. We fought really hard to get the referendum up. We're a mob, we've been here for thousands of years, and we're not going anywhere. We are strong, resilient, and deadly. While we believe that a voice to Parliament at national level would have been complementary to our work as a Treaty Assembly, it's important to remember that constitutional reform isn't the only show in town. Here in Victoria, we're making great progress on the treaty. We're going to be negotiating treaty early next year. The process we've established for negotiating treaties will put decision-making power directly into the hands of Aboriginal communities at a local level. That's what we're focused on, and we're going to get the job done. Let's be clear, when it comes to treaty in Victoria, we're not talking about an advisory body. We're talking about a meaningful and wholesale transfer of decision-making powers back into Aboriginal hands. Mob making decisions about mob and for mob. Now, to all our community, take the time to rest, recover and reflect. And when you're ready, the First People's Assembly is here for you. Mob, we need your ideas, hope and guidance, because on this journey you get to help set the destination. We've worked really hard over the last 4 years to get the framework to prepare for treaty. We're going to be negotiating a treaty. It's going to happen. We're putting more work into getting that to the place where we can do that, and we will be doing it. And we know that we have a lot of people in Victoria, despite the result. We do know that we have a lot of allies in Victoria. We know people who support us and support us strongly, and they have been really amazing on the journey to where we are today. And I want to personally thank all those young people that came out to the polling booths and helped us, that worked tirelessly in the past few months to prepare for the polling, and they have put their hearts and souls into it. And they're not Aboriginal people, they're young non-Aboriginal people, and they're old non-Aboriginal people as well. So I just want to thank all our allies today. And despite the result, I want to thank you all for voting yes.
Thanks, Aunty Esme. I'll just echo some of those sentiments. We understand that this is quite a difficult and heartbreaking time for members of our community, and want to just acknowledge that and make sure that our community know that, you know, all of us, we can come together with strength, and if people do need support and help in this time, to make sure they reach out, because we can't feel like we're alone in this time. We are all, as a community, as First People's community, united to be there for one another. And so I just want to make sure our mob out there know that, because this can be a challenging time. It is a challenging time and has been a challenging time. So it's really important that our priority is looking after ourselves as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And whilst the result of the referendum might not be what we had hoped for, I think there are some positives to come from this process. I think the fact that we're able to come together so strongly as members of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community across this state and across this nation, to have this unified cause to make sure we could get better outcomes for our peoples. And the fact that we had all our organisations come together to show such strength, that we had so many of our allies come together to show such strength. And it's something that I draw a lot of strength from, to know that we did have this coming together And it is a really powerful thing that we've been able to build. Despite not getting the result we wanted here, we know that we can now leverage all that effort, that energy, to move on to what we're trying to do here in Victoria. And what we're working on here in Victoria is something that we've been building for a long time. It's been 7 years of formal process to get us to this point, 4 years as the Assembly, but it's been decades of work prior to that. And we are going to continue on this path. We are dedicated to continuing on this path with our community, with the people of Victoria, to get to treaty outcomes. We're focused here in Victoria on practical local outcomes. That's what we're about as a part of a treaty process. And that's what our focus is going to be moving to from now. Happy to take any questions.
Advocates for the Uluru Statement from the Heart say they want to take a week now to reflect and take some time away and have some silence. Is this something you'll be doing as well, and why is that important?
Yeah, I think that's a completely understandable position. We wanted to recognise that because of our unique position here in Victoria, that we did need to make sure community understood that we were continuing on our treaty process. But this is the time we're planning to talk about the referendum. We're not planning to talk about it post today.
Rueben, Professor Marsha Langton said that she feared that reconciliation nationally would be dead after this. Do you have any thoughts on that statement? Or either of you actually, just any thoughts on what those opinions are?
I think obviously this has been a challenging time, and in the lead up to this, we're all worried about what might come. We now have a result, and so I think we now need to work together how we can continue on the journey we are on. I don't feel that reconciliation is dead. I feel that we've had a huge number of Australians come out and support this. Not the number we needed, but there is a huge amount of support out there still. And this referendum was about a very particular question, about a very particular change to our constitution. Clearly that has not been supported, but that doesn't mean that people don't support First Peoples. I have confidence in Australians. I know that Australians want better outcomes for other Australians. They're going to want better outcomes for us as First Peoples, as the first Australians, and I have confidence in that. Aunty Esme?
I agree. I think that reconciliation is a long process. I was on the Council for Aboriginal Reconciliation when it first started, and it was over a 10-year period, which was really, it couldn't happen in 10 years. I know there are a lot more people that are really into reconciliation in this country, and I don't think it's dead. I agree with Rueben that it was a specific question for a specific purpose. I think a lot of people, one of the reasons I think we didn't get the yes vote was people had misinformation for a start, and a lot of people don't know about Aboriginal people. They don't live in our communities, they don't work in our communities, and they don't know what we go through. They don't know the extent of dispossession, and they don't know the history. So I think that's one place that reconciliation has to start with truth-telling.
Victoria returned the highest yes vote out of any state. What do you take from that?
It's no great surprise to me that the Victoria did return the highest support. We've seen some really amazing progress we're already making here in Victoria, and I expect us to continue making that amazing progress here in Victoria.
Aunty Esme, there's obviously a fair bit of healing within the broader community, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal community, as a result of this. What role do you see the Assembly and leading organisations such as the Aborigines Advancement League playing in that healing?
I think that's a lot of communication. I think we need to really sit down and talk about what has happened. I don't think we can just get over it straight away. I think it does take time. But I think that we have to remember that, at my estimate, 2% of our people voted in that referendum. So 98% of the non-Aboriginal people voted in the referendum. So out of the 40% of people who did vote yes, it might not even been 2% of our mob that voted yes. So really 38 to 40% of people who voted yes were non-Aboriginal people. So there is a part for organisations to play in really speaking to people. And I think really about informing them about our mobs, because we tend to be a community within a community. So only the people who have anything to do with us are the ones who know us. We need to let everybody know who we are. And you know what that said about us, the referendum itself? It really told us about our generosity of spirit, because we didn't ask for much. We asked for very little, and we've never really asked for much in this country. So I think what it did say was we're still a generous people. We didn't get it, but you know what? we don't stop. We don't stop fighting because we are strong, we are resilient, and we will get up off the ground. Give us a week or so to mourn, give us some time, but we'll get up and we'll go again.
Victoria's treaty process is quite advanced. Do you think there's a path to treaty around the country without national action?
So we're in the process here of negotiating treaty specifically with the Victorian government, but the way we've set up the process doesn't preclude us from entering into negotiations with the Commonwealth as well. The Commonwealth can be a party to our negotiations alongside the state, and I would imagine that there would be similar opportunities across the rest of the nation with other states progressing their own treaties, that there's nothing prohibiting them from wanting to invite the Commonwealth to be part of those treaty negotiations as well.
Thank you both for speaking to us today. Could you kind of explain exactly what a treaty would involve?
So here in Victoria, when we talk about treaty, what we're talking about is an agreement between First Peoples, whether that's the Assembly or whether that's traditional owner groups, agreements between them and the state of Victoria. And these are agreements that, at the heart of it, are going to be about making sure that there are decisions that First Peoples can be making on their own. That's at the heart of treaty to me, is the government saying, yes, we recognise there are better outcomes, not only when we listen to First Peoples, but when First Peoples have a chance to actually make decisions. And so treaty is an opportunity to create the framework where decisions made by government can be transferred over to First Peoples. And that needs to be done, like all decisions, in an accountable way, in fair ways, and that's what we're striving for here in Victoria, where we can get better outcomes for First Peoples, but also lead to better outcomes for all Victorians by greater control being placed in the hands of First Peoples, whether that's around issues to do with housing, justice, education, employment, or whether that's around land management, water management. Those are the things where we see we can get great benefits for our community and great benefits for all Victorians.
Would there be a financial component to the treaty?
Yeah, obviously that's going to be a factor in how we have these conversations. If we're talking about decision making being transferred over to First Peoples, there's going to need to be some financial component to that. But this is all negotiations. That's a part of a negotiation. It's going to be a case of the First Peoples Assembly or traditional owner groups sitting down, having negotiations with the government, them and us having a joint agreement about what the best way forward is.
Rueben, do you think that the question and the Yes campaign itself could have been a little bit clearer? Because clearly it got lost with people who aren't aware of Indigenous issues, and it didn't get up, obviously. So do you think the question could have been better worded, or the issue could have been better explained to people?
Sure, I've got no great interest in picking apart and assessing the entire process and what led up to here. What I know is that from my perspective, it was a fairly straightforward and simple question and proposal, but it seems it's not one that the Australian people have chosen to support, and we're moving on to other things more practical, more local based here in Victoria.
Figures like Warren Mundine and Senator Price have said that work on improving Indigenous people's lives starts today. Do you take that comment in good faith, and what do you want to see from them?
All I know is that we're not focused on what other people are saying across other parts of the nation. We're focused on what we're doing in Victoria, and we're going to continue on our path we've been on for many, many years here of getting local practical solutions for First Peoples. It doesn't start just today. We've been doing that for a long time here in Victoria, and we're going to continue to do that.
You were telling me the other day, Rueben, that it has been very difficult for mob with a lot of the misinformation and disinformation that's gone through the campaign. There's been sort of columns in media, even in Melbourne, calling it like an apartheid, etc., for the Voice. Just how has the mob that you've interacted with been able to deal with this? It has been a really difficult situation. 13 Yarn have said they've got a lot more calls in the last sort of few months. Just in your personal interactions for both of you, how has it been on one-on-one with people?
Yeah, it's been very disheartening when a lot of us is going to put a lot of work into getting information out there about what the referendum was about, and then you would just see that dismissed with things that were clearly not true. And that was a heartbreaking thing to go through. And that's why I think it's incredibly important we continue to have these conversations to get the information out there. And I always encourage people that if you've heard something that sounds too good to be true or sounds too unbelievable to be true, it's probably not true. Go to the sources, come and talk to us. When we're continuing our path here on treaty, we're going to make sure we have lots of conversations with our community and with the broader community so that there's complete understanding about what we're doing here, so we can all move together forward on this treaty process.
What can the media do better to start covering black issues. And this is to both of you, because there have been some fairly bleak examples of media coverage, especially from more conservative media. What can we do better? What can we learn from this particular event in Australia's history?
I think the media coverage was really bad, particularly from the conservative media. I got to the stage where I wouldn't read it. It was that bad, and it was very pro-no. And it was pro-misinformation, which was really annoying. I think what the media has to do better is be more truthful. Really be fair and equitable to all sides. Give us as much time and effort in the papers as other people get, as the misinformation mob get. Find out the truth and print the truth, or interview people who are going to speak the truth. I don't mind if people have their opinions, that's fine. But when the opinions are obviously not true and they're misinformation or they're exaggerated, you need to really give both sides the opportunity to have a say. And I don't think that happened. And I think there was a big concentration on misinformation earlier in the referendum. They only started to listen to both sides at the end. When it was too late, people had already formed opinions. So I think the media have got a big part to play, and I think they need to be fair and equitable to all sides if that's what's going to happen.
Any other questions?
Did you have a message to anyone who voted no at this referendum?
I guess my message to those who voted no is that I hope that we're all still coming together as a nation, because as I said before, I think we all have the same aspirations as Australians. We all want our kids to have a better future. We all want the next generation to have a greater chance of success than the last. And I think that's something that, regardless of whether people voted yes or voted no, that's something that we can all agree on. There are, of course, times we're going to have differences about how we're going to get there, but as long as we can focus on that shared goal that we all have of better outcomes for future generations, I'm confident we can come together. And I just hope that we can keep having conversations so we can have clear and honest understandings about how we can get there and what the best way is to do that.
How do you do that when there's not bipartisanship on so many issues?
Yeah, it's tricky when, as sadly we've seen too often, our issues become political footballs where it's just a chance to score points from the way that our issues are addressed. We've got a really strong focus here in Victoria to make sure that we do have bipartisan support for the treaty process. We've done a lot of strong work to have that be the case, and we saw when we had our treaty authority legislation passed last year that there was really strong bipartisan support, and that's not something we take for granted. We continue to have those really important conversations, but we expect that to continue here in Victoria, that we do have that bipartisan support, because there is so much to be gained by everybody by having a meaningful, respectful treaty conversation here in Victoria.
Just following up on that, Greg Craven said that he made the question, I formed the question, to be so simple and so basic that he couldn't understand how anyone couldn't vote for it. He made it for conservative people, and still we've seen a no vote. I know you don't want to reflect on the question, but I was wondering, is there a disheartening fact that it was a very basic question and there wasn't a lot of strong change to it and it still got overwhelmingly defeated, that perhaps Reconciliation Australia or constitutional recognition nationally might not never get up if something as basic as that hasn't passed?
It's absolutely disheartening, and I always try and have as much faith and hope and optimism as I can. And so I'm hopeful that if we can continue to have these conversations, that the door's not closed for these conversations to be had in the future. But right now, for our community, we need some time to take just a break and take a breath. And here in Victoria in particular, we're going to be focused on the treaty making process. And we're hopeful that other states and territories can continue on their own process as well. We want to make sure we're supportive of that and showing our support for our fellow community members in other states and territories. And that if we can show really strong support across the states and territories, I'm hopeful that will lead to an inevitable recognition across the whole nation. All right. Thanks very much, everybody, for coming along. Appreciate it.